Friends. Come in here, everybody. Everybody, come in here. We need to have a counseling session, everybody. Friends, y'all come on in here. Let's have a little counseling session. Hold on. Let's wait for folks to come on in. Friends, I told y'all. Friends, I told y'all I'm trying to be good with not talking about my family situation, okay? But God commands me to talk about it, friends. Friends, so many men go through this damn evil. So many men go through this damn evil. Friends, I'm blameless. I am blameless, friends. friends, I met a lot of men in jail, the county jail, and they were not blameless. Every one of these men that had one of these domestic injunctions, they were not temporary. Like the men strangled the lady. The men slapped the lady. The men tried to kill the lady. Friends, I'm blameless. I have none of that stuff ever happened. Friends, I got to talk to my children for like 30 minutes tonight. It's the second time I've been able to talk to my children in literally a month, friends. It's been a month since. Friends, I can't explain this other than it's demonic. It's evil. Friends, my children are going backwards, friends. There's no strong men, and there's not a man in the home to tell the children to behave themselves. There's not a godly man around to tell the children to brush their teeth. There's not a godly man in the home to make sure the children are not bickering and quarreling with each other. Friends, my oldest daughter, she is struggling. I mean, I'm a mental health guy. I know these things. It breaks my heart. Let me turn my truck off, friends. I don't even have money for fuel. I'm literally living off a credit card until I get my disability. But this lady's demanding the courts take half my damn disability, friends. This is demonic. This is evil. Friends, I am, friends, I'm disgusted right now is what I am. Friends, my children are over at my mother's home, okay? Now, this is the home that I grew up in, the home that my father bought with my mother 40 years ago. It was 40 years ago that they bought that home. Friends, it didn't work out with my mom and my dad, all right? Those things happen. He was a physical guy. My father did things that I've never done, friends. I've never put my hand on this woman. Friends, I've never put my damn hands on this lady. And friends, in her little live field injunction, it doesn't even... These damn mosquitoes, friends. I'm literally out in the wilderness. Friends, in her little silly injunction that she wrote to the courts, it don't say nothing about the grizzly man putting his hands on anybody. It's a bunch of nonsense, friends. It's a bunch of damn nonsense. Friends, I've been out in the cemetery all day. I did a police call over there at the Bloomingdale, and I called the folks, and I don't know, friends. Maybe they won't mind me coming around there and helping out, friends. I don't know. They got a man that's already doing the job, and I'm not trying to dip in on somebody else's job, friends. I gotta find something the hell to do. Friends, I would love to have my old job back. I would love to have the 9-to-5. I would love to have the security, to have all the stuff that came along with that job, friends. Friends, I'm talking about the Bay Pines VA when I worked out there. But friends, that'll never happen, okay? I will never work for the federal government ever again in my life, friends. And I choose, not only is that not going to happen for me, I would choose not to. Friends, you got to understand, what happened to me in the workplace, it harmed me, friends. It was psychological harm. I don't trust any of y'all. Yeah, I'm a little paranoid, friends, but I'm not a kooky person. I have every reason in the world not to have any trust for y'all. Friends, what I just witnessed on that WhatsApp made me disgusted to the core of who I am, friends. Friends, everything that I have tried to teach my children in the 7 years, in the 10 years and 2 months, friends, that I've been a father. I've been a father for a decade, everybody. And even in my drinking days, I tried to be a good father. But friends, God slowly removed this. And then God removed that. And then God got me out of the motorcycle clubs. And God got me out of this. And friends, 3 years ago next week, God removed my alcohol addiction. Friends, I don't know why. I've always tried to get along with my family. I'm the guy that literally forced myself. Friends, if this was 3 years ago, I would have forced myself to take my family over to my mother's house, Mom and John, the Waldrons. But friends, I had to force myself for like the last 10 years, the last 20 years to go over there and do these things. Friends, I don't get along with my families when I'm explaining to you. I'm the only son out of I got one biological brother, and I got two stepbrothers. When my father and my mother split, friends, Dad went off and married Janet, and he was happy. Oh my goodness, friends, he was happy. He didn't have any more bickering and quarreling. And even though Janet was kind of loony, she was a little, she was a little out there. They got along, and my father. Friends, my father got to rebuild his life at like 35 or 36. He got the whole fresh start. But friends, my father only lived another 20 years before he died in the ultralight plane crash, friends. But friends, my mom and my stepfather, John, they had to merge two families. And friends, it was challenging. It was 4 boys in the home, friends. And my friends on here remember that. Friends, I almost said it, the F word. Friends, I'm sick to my damn stomach. Friends, is the volume even working? I don't know. Y'all are probably just watching me. Hold on, let me just check this, friends. I'm just so disgusted right now with what I just witnessed on the call. Hold on, friends. I mean, of course, it ain't working. Oh, it is. Hey, thank y'all for subscribing. I'm almost up to 100 subscribers, friends. Friends, my pain and suffering's for y'all, friends. I told you, I was a peer support guy. Friends, I have never really got along with my family. I didn't get along with my stepdad when he showed up there, friends, because I was 14 years old when my dad got booted out of the house. My mom ran my father out of there, friends. There was no love. But, friends, I told you, my father was a physical guy. And he struggled, friends. My father was a good man. He knew Jesus. He's the one that Tommy Shannon called me last night. I got to speak to Tommy Shannon. Tommy Shannon reminded me that it was my father, Ron Messer Sr., that got him and Richie to become Christians. And my mother had it all wrong. She's, oh, no, it wasn't your father. Richie and Tommy taught him about Jesus. Well, no, lady, I told you. Maybe you need to put down the booze and maybe your memory will come back. Friends, I resented my stepfather, John, because I was 14 and I missed my father. Because my father and I had my father bought a 1966 Mustang. And it was going to be our little project. And he says, look, we're going to spend a couple years putting it together. And by the time you're 18, it'll be your little hot rod. And you can go to the homecoming with it. You can go to the prom with it. Well, friends, that never happened because when I was 14, the way I interpreted it was my mother ran my dad out of the home. Friends, my father had a friend at work. And he fell in love with that lady. That was Janet. And Janet was going through a divorce too, everybody. I mean, friends, I can't make this stuff up. Friends, my father did some naughty, and my mother never, ever could forgive him for any of that stuff. And friends, I was never abusive. I was never abusive husband, friends. So I can't relate. I've never been in a relationship where the spouse beat me, you know. But friends, I resented my stepfather because I lost my father, and then now I got this John Waldron character, you know. And he was a good time rock and roll guy. He was not like my father. John Waldron hung around all the bars. He was a bar guy. And I remember my mom, when they started dating, John Waldron hung out in all the bars, everybody. My friends, my father was not a bar guy. My father would just hang around his home. But John Waldron was in all the line dancing and all the ladies and all the loose, fast stuff, friends. And I couldn't stand it. I didn't like the man. But friends, I forced myself because next thing I know, in a couple of years, him and his boys moved in. And friends, we got along, you know, we did the best we could. But friends, when I turned 18, I joined the Army and I joined the National Guard, and I was the hell out of there. But friends, there was always friction with these people. Friends, these people are fake is what I'm explaining to you. There's not 1 ounce of realness in them. You can't ever go up to these people and have like a real conversation like we're doing, friends. It's all it's all fake and phony baloney. So, friends, I had to force myself for like the last 30 years to go over to all these little parties. The Waldrons are having their nice Christmas party tonight, friends. Friends, my daughter, I'm trying to spend, friends, I get 1 hour with my children every other day because of what this lady's done to me, friends. This lady threw me in jail last week because I texted her mom and I apologize that all this is going on. Friends, this is so damn evil. Friends, every time that we've tried to mix alcohol and me and the family, it's always been a problem. It ain't just me, friends. I mean, these people, friends, I don't want to get into it, but these people are drunks. Friends, they're drunks. They're drunks, friends. Friends, these people are drunkards. And when you got a little trauma and you got a little resentment and then the alcohol flows, friends, it's just problem after problem. I told you, friends, my real brother's the phoniest guy I've ever known. All he wants to do is pretend to be a surfer and hang out in St. Augustine and just let his wife just control him, friends. All these men I'm telling you about, friends, they're not men. They're girly men. My father, the man that I'm named after, Ron Messer Sr., friends, that guy was a man's man. And we're so much alike, friends, but I've kind of taken it to the next level with my story. You know, my father wasn't a veteran. And my father's up in heaven with Jesus right now. Friends, my brother, I told you, I've tried, friends. I've made the effort all these years. I had to force myself. And when my father died, I was the only one that was local, so I used to go there and help my stepmom. I mowed the yard. I basically took over my father's duties for 6 months. And then Janet had a boyfriend, friends. I couldn't believe it. I was so bitter and angry at the lady. But now looking back, I understand. You know, the lady was in her 50s. And she was a little older than my father. Who wants to be alone? Who wants to be alone when your spouse dies? Who the hell is this creeping up on me? Friends, I'm not in the mood. Hold on. Friends, I am not in the stinking mood. I told you, I went down to the Emporium today. And I'm not allowed to have my staff, my Alpine axe handle. But I'm not allowed to have any weapons either, friends. I'm not allowed to have any firearms or ammo, Hillsborough County. But I got the Louisville Slugger, friends. I'm just itching, friends. Oh, Lord Jesus, please calm me down, Lord, calm me down. Friends, I had to force myself to have a relationship with my family is what I'm explaining to you. And the fact that I had the alcohol addiction, friends, it didn't help anything out, friends. It always made it worse. Because they hold on, friends. Turn this on. Corporal Stevens, what the hell's going on here? Oh, my Lord Jesus. Turn this damn truck on. I don't care. We'll just burn a little more fuel, friends. Friends, I have had to force myself to be around these folks. My family, friends. And I know some of y'all understand this. Friends, you can't choose who your family is. But you can choose who you hang out with, friends. And I don't hang out with nobody. I hang out with a bunch of bodies in cemeteries. And I got little Lukey called me earlier, friends. Friends, I did. Little Lukey had a panic attack, everyone. And he had to pull off. Friends, his father just passed away. His they lived in Fort Myers. You know, the preacher. The preacher, he was a Baptist preacher. He was he was a musician, friends. And little Lukey had to leave Georgia, and he had to go down there for last week and be with the family and do all the planning. I mean, friends, this ain't going to be friends, there's going to be 1,000 people at this funeral, I'm telling you. I mean, the guy was world famous musician in the Baptist church, you know, in the music scene. Y'all never heard of him because a lot of y'all are perverted. But friends, little Lukey called me today when I was at the, oh my gosh, what the hell's the name of that? Friends, I found a new cemetery, but I already knew about it. I just cruised in there and just started cleaning, friends, and y'all saw the live. I was straightening up all the headstones. I had the hot water music rolling. But little Lukey had a panic attack, friends. He had to pull over. And I was on the phone when it happened. I was like, oh, my Lord Jesus, please don't let my little friend, don't let him get killed. And I just started praying. And then 20 minutes later, he called me back and said, oh my gosh, I hate it when that happens. Friends, it's real. The war trauma is real, friends, but I don't suffer from any war trauma. The Lord removed it all. But friends, when I was a soldier, when I was in the National Guard, and I would go on all these deployments. Oh, my family, they would just love to have a party to get drunk, friends. They'd have a big old homecoming party, and everybody would have all the drunkenness. And friends, they used to like me, but they didn't like me, friends. They just used me. They used me as the deployed soldier to make themselves look better, friends. Friends, I just stopped going to these parties over the last couple of years. And then when I lost my job, I just said, look, honey, you just take the children over there, and I don't want to go. I don't want to be around these people. Because, friends, I would go over there and try to talk some sense into them. I would maybe tell them about my work situation, and they would say, oh, what are you doing? Don't be talking about that. Go get a beer and go watch some football. Shut up and go watch football. Friends, I told you these people are fake. They're phony. They're like the worst kind of people, friends. They are the absolute worst kind of people. They're just fake. It's a facade. It's like North Korea when you're going down the little main strip. Everything looks all put together, but on the inside, it's all fake. All the fruit's plastic, friends. These people are fake is what I'm telling you. So, friends, when I got sober, When I got sober 3 years ago next week, I got sober, friends. And that was literally, it was before I had to walk away from the job. So friends, I forced myself to be around my family, and I don't drink any longer. So I'm hanging around them 3 years ago during the holidays, just like now, the Arlene Waldron holiday party. Friends, the lady, she probably spends thousands of dollars on her little parties. They don't go out and feed homeless people. No, 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 no. They won't bail their son out of jail when he's so unrighteously thrown in there because his wife's going through a lunatic cycle. No, no, no. Friends, my mother hung up the collect calls every time, and I'm glad, because I probably would have been thrown back in jail. I'd probably be violated just to let mom know I'm in the jail. So friends, I forced myself to hang around these people. And friends, when I was sober, it was sobering. It was like God revealed, he took the veil off me. So I could actually see, friends, when you get sober and you're hanging around a bunch of drunks for years, and then you get sober, you get to actually watch these people behave. Friends, when you're drunk like them, you don't get to observe everything. But when you're sober and you're sober-minded, you get to look around like, oh my gosh, like I used to behave like that. Like I used to stumble, like, friends, it's a nightmare. So friends, I would force myself to go over to these places and hang out with them, because I was doing everything I tried to do to be like the good son, the oldest son. You know, friends, I'm the oldest, friends. I'm the triple eight type male. So friends, I told you, we would try to go on vacations, and it was always a nightmare. It was just drink, drunk, friends. And literally, when I had to walk away from my job, it was like weeks after I had to walk away. And we had to go to Margaritaville, friends. I told you, these people just love all the drunkenness. So I'm trying to tell my brothers about my work situation, and they're like, oh, Ronnie, shut up. We don't want to hear it. And then they just start talking about their jobs and all their money. I couldn't believe it, friends. So friends, I told you, I just stopped going. I just said, no more. It's just too much trouble to try to do it with these people. But then it was Thanksgiving of 2023, friends. I had already had to walk away from the job. I hadn't hired the lawyer yet. But I was trying to explain to them that I worked in Congress, and I might be able to be a whistleblower someday. And they laughed at me, friends. They all laughed at me. Friends, the worst part was my mother. Again, friends, I told you, these people they're the fakest people that I've ever known in my life. Mom bought everybody, my stepdad's, his wildest dream was to go to the Army-Navy game. Friends, I told you, these people, they're demons. Friends, you know what my wildest dream is? My wildest dream is that one of y'all would donate a couple bucks so I can go put some food in my homeless veterans' bellies down there in Ybor City. Friends, mom bought all the sons, all of us. My brother, my two stepbrothers. She bought us all it was $1,000 a ticket, everybody, and she bought all the planes. She bought everything because she knew we wouldn't do it on our own. So she like guilted us and forced us. So it was that year, friends, 2023. I had just walking away from the job. Friends, I wasn't doing Sgt Grizzlegrits. Believe it or not, I had a photo. I bought the blue shades, friends. It was an accident, and I didn't want to wear them, but I had to get on the plane, so I brought the blue shades. And there's a picture of me at the Gillette Stadium with the blue shades on. The YouTube, friends, they removed it. But I didn't appeal, friends. I don't know. I might be back on. Friends, I forced myself to go to that game, and I had been sober for literally 1 year. And I prayed, I said, Jesus, I don't want to be hanging around my brother, and he's a drunk, and my stepbrother is a sloppy drunk, and my stepdad's a drunk. But my nephew Ethan was going, and he was very spiritual. But friends, I guess he's not. I don't know what Jesus he's following, but Jesus don't say you turn your back on your uncle. They all blocked me and banned me, friends. But before that, I forced myself to go to the game, everybody. It was a nightmare, friends. I mean, friends, they did not disappoint. Here I am. I'm literally. We got an Airbnb, and I had mice. Friends, I had mice running around in my room. My knucklehead stepbrother, he got us an Airbnb, like literally in the hood. Friends, I mean, these people, I just can't explain it. And it was drunkenness after drunkenness. And friends, it got to a point that we went to the game, and it was just like, give me a break, But it was the next day. Everybody wanted to go to the JFK Museum, and it was pretty cool, friends. I can't lie. But I was in there talking to my stepbrother about my work situation, and then out of nowhere, my stepfather in the other room says, "Ronnie, you knocked that off. We don't want to hear none of that." So friends, I walked into the room and I said, I'm going to explain this to y'all very clearly. I said, if y'all don't want me to ever come to these things and talk to y'all about things going on in my life, then don't y'all ever invite me again. And friends, I packed up all my gear and I sat outside because we were literally waiting for the Uber to take us to the museum. And we did, friends. And I didn't say one damn word. And we got there, friends, and it was the most awkward, painful ride. And I made sure of it, friends. Friends, that was the day at the Army-Navy game, the day after on that Sunday. That's the day that they crossed the line with me. And I told these people, I told these drunkards, I said, I didn't say nothing, friends. When we got there, I got the hell out of I got out of the Uber, and they just, I told you these people are all fake, and they're all drunk, and they were all probably hungry. They were drinking in the morning, friends. So, friends, I got out of that Uber, and they went towards the museum, and I went this way, friends. Friends, I did a walk. Friends, this is before I did any social media. I didn't have a YouTube channel. Friends, I was me, Ronnie Messer, literally just got my job removed from me. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have a lawsuit. My FOIA requests were like in the pending cycle. But friends, I took a walk. I literally walked around. It was Boston. It was really nice, friends. It was Boston, the harbor. I walked around the harbor for like 2 hours, friends. And I'm just praying. I said, Jesus, why? Why are these people so evil? Why do they hate me so much? I don't want to partake in the drunkenness. Why do they not want to listen to me? Why do they want to believe me that the work situation was real? Why do they want to blame me for everything? I've been sober for a year. Friends, I did a walk for 2 hours, and it was cold. It was freezing. And then God told me to go in the museum, and I did, friends. I walked in the museum. And I paid the $12 and I went in there. And there was a lot of history, friends. I didn't want to miss that opportunity. And then I caught up to my brother. He knew he stepped in it with me. Friends, mind you, these people are not soldiers. They're not combat. They're the fakest, phoniest people you ever knew in your life, friends. They're the worst. So I started having a little talk with my brother. And I said to him something like this. I said, look, you will never know what I've gone through in my life. You will never know what I had to go through in the war. You will never understand what I had to go through in my workplace. And he started tearing up. He goes, you're right. You're right. I never will. And then the guy started complaining about his wife. I told you these people, they don't pick godly women. At least my wife let me be the man for a little while. It just the Sgt Grizzlegrits was just a little too much for her to bear. Friends, I told you my wife she was just a little too close to the sun. Friends, imagine being married to Alex Jones. Y'all know who Alex Jones is. Friends, Alex Jones' first wife is a lot like my wife. She just went kooky. She just couldn't handle it. She wasn't cut out to handle a man like Alex Jones and Sgt Grizzlegrits. So, friends, my brother, my real brother, he started tearing up and he started complaining about his wife. Friends, I told you, I didn't know this, but I knew it. He said how she just racks up literally $3,000 on the Amazon, friends. Every month, the lady buys $3,000 worth of nonsense. And the lady don't even work, friends. She's like a part-time teacher at the school that his children go to. So my brother had to take out like a loan, and he had to take out 2 jobs. I told you that these people are not men. They're little perverted girly men. So my brother's just doing the waterworks, and I'm so pissed off. I'm like, I can't believe that y'all would talk to me in the manner that you did. And then, friends, I put some truth on the guy. I said, why don't you divorce her? This lady's ruining your life. You're miserable. Dad would be so disappointed if he even knew that you were putting up with this garbage. And then the girly man just started bawling in front of me. And then his son, friends, I hate doing this, friends, but I got to get to you what I just witnessed like an hour ago. He says, I can't believe you're dressing down my wife in front of my son. I said, look, brother, your wife's a nightmare. And you're allowing this to happen. Why don't you put your foot down? Why don't you take the damn credit card away from the lady? Then maybe you can have a little peace in your home. Friends, my brother does all the dishes. He does all the cooking, all the cleaning. He does everything. He works 2 jobs. And friends, I think he lost his job, to be honest with you. I told you, the DEI. It's gonna eventually get all y'all. But friends, I told my brother I love him. And I said, look, I forgive you. I said, look, I've been sober 1 year, It's challenging. And I gave him a hug, and I told him I love him, friends. And friends, that was the last time I ever talked to the guy. Because we got on the plane a little later on that day, and my stepbrother was old drunk at the airport. And he was just mocking me, and he said something real smart, and we're about to get on the plane. Friends, I told you, him and my stepdad were at the bar getting drunk before the flight, and I'm just sitting there, in my seat, waiting. He said some smart-ass comment to me, and I said, oh, you must have got all that information off your MSNBC. I know you watched that in CNN. And then he got like, huh? Friends, I can't make this nightmare up. So, friends, my stepfather had to drive me home, and he did, and it was awkward. It was an awkward. Friends, I told you I dressed these people down. I told them the night before, if y'all don't want me to go along on these little trips, don't you ever invite me. And friends, they took my advice, and friends, I had never been invited ever since. Friends, I can't explain this evil, I've given these people every opportunity. They don't call. That Christmas comes, and it's like I don't exist. Friends, that was 2 years ago. That was 2 years ago. Nobody calls. Nobody does nothing. I'm like the worst person in the world because I don't want to partake in their drunkenness. So, friends, I reached out to my brother like a year ago, and the guy just ignores my text. I said, I'm sorry. I want to work it out. I don't want to lose my relationship with you. But they don't care, friends. So, friends, like 2 months ago, it was literally right before the last round of the peaceful protesting. I sent them a text. I sent my mother, my stepfather, and my 2 girly men brothers, friends. I sent them a text, and I even tagged my wife in it. My wife knows this. I apologized for the last time. I said, I'm so sorry that all this happened. I said, but my lawsuit's real. I know y'all don't understand these things, but I love y'all, and I'm so sorry that our family's kind of been broken up. And I said, if y'all could ever find it in your heart to forgive me for whatever I did, I'd love to, try to put our relationship back together. Friends, not one of these people responded to me. It was like I don't exist, friends. So, friends, that leads us up to tonight. I'm trying to have my hour with my children, and it's a nightmare, friends. Friends, when you remove a strong, godly man like me out of the home for a month, friends, the children implode. They're all after each other. Friends, I told you my wife ain't doing no parenting. My wife don't know how to be a parent. She wants to be all the children's best friend. Friends, I told you my soon-to-be ex-wife sleeps in bed with my son. Friends, it's evil. So, friends, I told you I was talking to my oldest, and I was, she's friends. My oldest is like me, everybody. She pays attention to everything. She has discernment. She's learning spirituality, but she's suffering right now. And she told me she misses me, and I said, don't forget me. Whatever you do, just don't forget me. I did not leave. I was forced out of the home. And she's like, Daddy, I know. We know. We love you. But then, friends, my daughter comes in there, my middle child, and she grabs the phone. She's like, Daddy, because she don't know what's going on. She's like, Daddy, I want to go show you everybody. And friends, this is where I got sick to my stomach and I got disgusted. Friends, my daughter, she was like, I want to go introduce you to all the cousins and show you the cousins. And I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. I'm not allowed to go in there. So my middle child brings me on the phone, friends. She has the phone. And she wanders through the Waldron's home, friends. Friends, again, what the hell have I been through the last couple of years? I've been sober. I've been seeking God. I created a ministry. I've been trying to put my marriage back together, but friends, it's a lost cause, I mean, it's literally like I'm on the ark, and I got all the animals and my wife. I got my children on there, but my wife and all my family and all y'all are outside the ark, and we just can't open it, friends. So, friends, my middle child takes the phone, and I'm trying not to watch, friends, but she goes around the corner, and then she goes right. Friends, I have not been welcome in the home I grew up in like 2 years. My mother shut the door in my face earlier this year, friends. I can't explain these people. I begged her to go to church with me over the summer, and I held her hand in church, and I squeezed it like, I love you, like I forgive you. Let's just move past this. But they don't want to move past nothing, because then they have to accept responsibility. Friends, the cemetery that I started cleaning up is the Sefner Cemetery. That's where that's where her whole damn family is. Well, Aunt Joyce and Uncle Billy's at another one. No gratitude at these people, friends. It's all shame, friends. I understand. I'm a mental health guy. It's all projection, friends. These people are empty on the inside. Because when you're drunk, you wake up hungover, and then you got all that shame, and then you just want to start drinking again, so you forget about all your damn problems. Friends, what my daughter showed me on that camera made me sick to my damn stomach. Friends, I'm literally living. Look, friends, I got bologna for a sandwich tonight. I can only afford the $1.47 Walmart bread, friends. I don't have any money, friends. I had to pay my friend back for bailing me out of jail because Mom just hung up the phone. I'm not even going to talk to you. No collect calls. Friends, I'm being treated like the worst criminal in the damn world. I got a damn ankle. I got a GPS monitor, and I need to charge it, friends. I don't want it to die. Friends, I created a ministry. I seek Jesus. I have spiritual talks with my spiritual mentors. And my wife loses her mind a month ago, runs to the courts and does all this evil on me. I try to apologize to her mother, and the next thing I know, I got cuffs slapped on me in court, friends. Friends, 2 times I try to go to court and I can't go to court. So I get my hour with my children tonight. I'm playing by all the rules, friends, all the rules. I'm the Christian. I'm the guy getting persecuted. So my daughter takes me in there in the camera, and nobody knew I was on the phone, friends. Friends, what I saw made me sick to my damn stomach, because I'm not allowed to be around my children. I can't teach them about Jesus. I can't teach them about sobriety. I can't teach them about right and wrong. No. They're surrounded by a bunch of drunks right now, everybody. And just like every other time I've been over there, my brothers are over there, my stepdad, they're just slapping each other in the backs, having all the drinks, friends, and it's just loud, it's a ruckus. All the wives are there, having all their wine, friends. They have like a bottle each every night when they're hanging out over at the Waldron's house. And then, friends, I saw the food spread. Friends, there's so much food there. There's so much damn food I saw in that camera. Friends, I've lost like 25 pounds since I saw my children. Friends, that is not a lie. I'm literally withering away. Mom's got all the decorations. She's got all the presents, all the tree. Everything's all nice and all pretty for her little holiday party. Friends, I told you these people are not Christians. It's so loud, it's so noisy, and of course my children are immersed in this damn evil, everybody. Friends, I got angry, and I haven't been angry in a long time, friends. Friends, you understand what the devil's done? Friends, God's in control of all this. God's allowed the devil to infiltrate all these people that used to be my family, that have resentment towards me because I'm godly, friends. Friends, when you're evil and you're wicked and you're fallen, friends, you're gonna have resentment towards somebody like me. You're gonna have pleasure that I have a mugshot. And friends, I don't know, but I think they were talking about me and laughing when my child walked in there. But friends, all the food, all the liquors over here, they got the beer outside in the cooler, they got all the wine over here for all the wives. I could not stand it, friends. And I told my daughter, I said, please get out of there. You go back in the bedroom, the master bedroom, so I can talk to you. And then, friends, my mother had the nerve to go in there and use the bathroom. And I got so angry. I said, how dare you? I told my daughter, I said, you don't say a word. You don't say a word till she gets out of there. Friends, I gotta decompress. I haven't eaten all day, friends. I'm like literally got no money for nothing. When my wife did this to me and threw me in the loony bin, and then she found out I was getting out because it's all nonsense. She went down there and did the lied-filled injunction. Friends, I got it right back here. She did the whole lie-filled injunction. Because she thought I was gonna... Friends, I have no idea. This lady has no idea who I am. So, friends, I was homeless. I was living in my truck for like a week, and then I drove to the Smoky Mountains, and I bought an RV on credit. Friends, if I didn't have my credit card, friends, I would literally be homeless in Ybor City with all the other folks. But my family could care less. They're all drunk tonight. They got all the food. They got all the earthly treasures. Friends, if you read the Bible and you learn about Sodom and Gomorrah, friends, my family is living Sodom and Gomorrah. All the wives love all the LGBT. They love it. They got friends. They got all the perverted friends. Friends, I want to show you something. When I was doing my peaceful protest, one thing my wife forgot to put in the injunction, and my stepmother, when they violated me and I got arrested, friends, what they failed to remember is I wasn't doing it because I'm a lunatic. Friends, I was doing it for this guy right here. I was doing it for my brother-in-law, Sergeant David Andrew Croft, that died for our freedoms. He got killed in the war. That's my mother-in-law's son. That's my wife's brother. Friends, the flag that I had, I don't have it, friends, it's at the home. But friends, that flag I had upside down was the flag on this man's casket. I was trying to bring awareness because our country is all drunkards now. They're all like the Waldrons. Nobody cares any longer. Nobody cares that this man gave his life. Friends, I had this book out there for people and they did, friends. They came up to my table and they were looking at it. What the hell's wrong with y'all? Today's a tough day. This is by Captain Dolan. Friends, my family used to not always be this wicked, is what I'm explaining to you. They have a lot of pleasure that I was in jail, friends. They had a lot of pleasure. I saw it in their eyes when my daughter, my child, was walking around with the kid. Friends, they had no idea that I was in the room with them. They had no idea I was in that damn room with them. I know what y'all did. Friends, I can't read this stuff. I'm gonna get upset. You see, friends, when you don't want to have understanding, you're gonna come up to any damn conclusion that you ever want, because you don't want to have any understanding of what the hell I did. Friends, this was David's best friend. This is Mr. Matt McDaniel. And this man struggled with alcohol, and he struggled with all sorts of demons too. And the man found God and got sober like me. And it wasn't that long ago that my wife had a lot of understanding for what I was trying to do, friends. But friends, when you don't seek God and you let the devil creep up in there, well, friends, then you're gonna have your children over at the Waldron's house with all the drunks and all the wickedness. Friends, do you think for 1 second that my brothers go out and feed homeless people? Do you think for 1 second they do anything like that? No. That's money for the party, for the Waldron's holiday party. Do you think they remember any of these things? Did they ever have a day? Did John Waldron, my stepfather, I hate saying these people's names, but I am so damn disgusted what I just witnessed. Friends, none of those people had a day like this. And friends, I'm going to be honest with you. I never had a day like this either, friends. I never had my best friend, Little Lukey, or my old friend, Marchalewski. I want nothing to do with that guy any longer until he gets righteous. Friends, our squad was over there, and we all made it home, friends. My friends, my wife's brother did not make it home. He was like one of the 3,000 soldiers that was killed over there. But they just want to lock me up and call the detective and have cuffs thrown on me and throw me in jail. I can't stand this damn evil, friends. I won't stand for it. Friends, I was out there doing my peaceful protest for David. I was doing it for all the soldiers that y'all forgot about. I was doing it for my wife. I was doing it for my mother-in-law. I did it for Mr. H.K. Edgerton too, because what I witnessed was abomination, friends. That's not America when you just remove a man because you don't like what he's wearing. That is not America, friends. I told you, friends, we hadn't lived in America in a long time. Friends, I donned the helmet. That's Sgt Grizzlegrits, friends. It is the American soldier, for God's sake. Look at this, friends. Friends, does it make sense to y'all now? I'm not a lunatic. I'm a lot smarter than y'all. My character is all these men. My character is Sgt Grizzlegrits. My character is the American soldier. I did the advocacy work, friends, and yeah, I got a little obsessed with some things here and there. I'm not perfect, everybody. I neglected my marriage because I was just having the time of my life out there exposing this evil. But look where it left me, friends. It left me literally living in a trailer on a credit card. That is going to come to pass sometimes, friends. I'm going to have to pay the $500 payments again. Dear Jesus, please, Lord, give me comfort, Lord. Give me comfort to get through this, Lord. I know so many men go through this. There's like 3 of them in the camp, friends, and they don't have a nice mansion trailer to go live in. They're literally, I saw a man, he was sitting at the bench, and he's got a tent. And I could tell all his belongings were in the car, friends. I'm not a mind reader. I have discernment. I can read body language. And the 3 men that I saw when I was rolling in here, friends, they were distraught. And I guarantee you they got something very similar going on. Friends, what the hell's wrong with y'all? Why do y'all not want to have any compassion or understanding for anybody any longer? You just want to get drunk and just do it your way, right? Well, I'm going to explain this to you. Then I do got to go, friends. I burned up a quarter tank of gas today. I filled it up last night. I burned a quarter tank driving around cleaning up 2 cemeteries. And friends, I don't get no donations from none of y'all. But it's okay, friends. I got to do this journey alone, apparently. Friends, if Jesus came back tonight, like right now, right in the middle of this live stream, he would dress me down for getting on to my family again. Friends, but I told you, what I saw made me so damn sick. But friends, if Jesus came back right now, everyone in the Waldron's home would be left back here. My children would disappear and meet Jesus up in heaven with me. And my wife and my mother and all my drunk brother friends are all drunk right now, is what I'm telling you. I'm doing a live stream. I was literally in their living room like an hour ago. Friends, everyone in that home besides my children would wind up in the eternal fires when I'm explaining it to you. Friends, that's not acceptable to me. That breaks my heart. These people were godly at some point. Friends, I'm going to Tommy and Richie Shannon's church in the morning. I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock because I need to talk to Richie. Because my mother reached out to Tommy Shannon and Richie and basically told them that I'm a lunatic and they need to help stop me for the sheriff hauls me away forever. Well, Mom, it didn't work out the way you thought because I told you, you're drunk like everyone else in your house right now, besides my children. Friends, Tommy Shannon did reach out to me last night, and he was so overjoyed that he finally got to talk to me. He says, oh my gosh, I love your YouTube. I love it, I love it, I love it. He says, it's about time somebody fights this evil the way you're doing it. You're very creative. You're a lot smarter than these people. And he just said he couldn't get enough of the Sgt Grizzlegrits. And he told me he don't like the sheriff. He don't like the sheriff. He don't like the sheriff. Friends, Tommy and Richie Shannon did like 20 or 30 years in the Hillsborough County Sheriff. Tommy was a resource officer. He did like 12 years in the schools, and then he got trained and became a detective, friends. He was a homicide detective. And friends, Richie Shannon was a master sergeant. He had a squad. He was out there on the beat with Sergeant B. Kinney, but he wasn't like Sergeant B. Kinney. Richie Shannon, if you needed to go to jail, he would take you to jail. But he had that discernment. Oh my goodness. Look, friend, just pray. All you can do is pray. All you can do is pray. All we can do is pray. I was literally in my family's home, in their living room, when they're having their drunkard holiday party, and I'm not allowed to be around my children. And my daughter ran in there with a camera, and I got to see all my brothers all drunk, just doing all the black and just talking all the stories and having the time of their life watching me suffer. Friends, if Jesus comes back tonight, are you going to go off and be with the Lord, or are you going to wind up in the eternal fire? Oh, of course, the painkillers. Well, I don't do any drugs, friends. You just knock yourself out. Friends, what I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm trying to show y'all, friends. This is real life. And when you make a choice to get spiritual, it's going to cost you your family sometimes if they're not godly. You know, little Luke, he's very blessed because his family, well, they're all spiritual. Friends, I got to unload my truck. I told you I went to the yard sale emporium. I hung out with Double D. He's a good man. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Oh, Mr. Henney, call me on the work phone, sir. I'll have a stern talking with you about God. And listen, sir. Sir, next time you put God in my comments, you better capitalize it, friend. That's blasphemy. You better capitalize the Lord's name. I'll be praying for you, Mr. Henney. Another clown in here sneaking up the comments, friends. That's fine. I don't really sneak and care. You know, friends, heaven does have has a capacity limit. And Jesus is real, and he's got the manifest, friends. He's got the manifest. Mr. Henney, I pray that you learn to get spiritual. Because I literally, when I was in jail this past week, I read the book of Revelations and what God's got in store for you, my friend. You're not going to like it, and you're not going to have a choice at that point. You can repent when that happens, and all the Christians were going to go off and be with Jesus in the sky, friends. It is true. You're going to be left here, and you're going to be tormented. It's not going to be fun. It ain't going to be like The Walking Dead. You're not going to walk around with zombies. It's going to be the wrath. There's going to be 7 seals open, and you're not going to like any of these things. You're going to have the locusts, and they're going to be biting you, the scorpions. Oh, these people, friends, I told you. Yeah, you go hang out with your science. I'm sure that we all came from apes, and the Big Bang Theory is how we all got here. That's fine, friends. I'm not going to get any more quarreling with these knuckleheads in the comments. But Mr. Henney, Mr. Loco, if you're harming the children, I found another hole at my cemetery. You just give me a call later and I'll come scoop you up and we'll just take care of it that way. You know, we ain't got no time for all the evil. So look, friends, I'm gonna go make me a bologna sandwich with a little mustard. And I got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of goodies at the Emporium today. I got a lot of goodies. All right, look, friends, I gotta go. I just had a bounce on here. Friends, I do this because a lot of men go through this evil. So I'm just trying to help some men out, you know, and maybe some ladies. I don't know, friends. What a nightmare. Other friends, I'll talk to y'all later. Oh, look at these clowns. Hold on. Oh, Mr. Henney, Loke. I mean, who the hell are these? Where do y'all come from? Point a bat at the screen. Oh, good Lord Jesus. Let me explain something to you, Mr. Henney. Jesus ain't all Rosie and daisies. I mean, there's a side of Jesus. There's a side of Jesus you're gonna get to know pretty soon, friends. He told me he's en route. Mr. Henney, Jesus came the first time when he was on the earth as a human. He was the Prince of Peace. But when he's coming, he's bringing the wrath. And I think he's going to bring it just for you, my friend. You better get righteous, buddy. I know, it's only you. I know, it's just us. We can have a little intimate time if you'd like. In a very non-perverted, non-homosexual way, Mr. Henny Loke. I don't know what your deal is, sir, but I'm going to be praying for you. All right, friends, I got to go. I'm going to go make a sandwich. So, Mr. Henny, call me later and we'll have a spiritual talk. You know how to get a hold of me. Y'all have a good night, and we'll talk to you later.